Du gamla, du fria, du fjällhöga nord. Du tysta, du glädjerika sköna. Jag hälsar dig, vänaste land upp på jord. Din sol, din himmel, dina ängder gröna. Din sol, din himmel, dina ängder gröna. Hello and welcome to the Humanitarian Superpower. I'll be your storyteller for tonight, and I will tell the story of the Humanitarian Superpower, where the United Nations act as a vehicle. Aid is a business, pointing fingers and self-proclamation, and a wee bit of chaos in its path. So open your hearts, take your responsibility, and remember that no matter the size of the problem at hand, another feel-good show and a few more taxes, and we will save the world. Am I right? Hi again, and welcome back. As I said, I will be your storyteller for the night, and I've prepared a pretty good story, I think. Or at least in my mind I've prepared it. And I put down 17 chapters to help me tell this story. And it's not certain that these chapters will be the best way to tell this story, or the most logical separation of facts and events. But I think it can help others understand what's going on in Sweden right now. And just to give you a little bit of context, I'm about 30 years old, I'm born in Sweden, and I live here now and pay taxes. I'm not convicted of any crimes, and I consider myself quite a peaceful individual. But for the last 10 years or so, I've been increasingly frustrated with the politics here, relations with politics outside of the country, and the problems that we now have. So this video is directed to mainly international viewers who, for some reason, have gained interest in the country Sweden. So I'm gonna tell the story of the Humanitarian Superpower, as I said. I've separated into 17 chapters. And the first chapter is called the Humanitarian Superpower. And hopefully this will help to explain what Sweden is, how it became what it is, and where it's going. So under the topic, the Humanitarian Superpower, I've put socialism and democracy, and added, is the same model used everywhere? Because I see and I recognize, the naming, socialism, democracy, and not to surprise you, the biggest political party here in Sweden, they're called the Social Democrats. And I think this naming pattern is probably found at least in a lot of Western countries, and I'm sure also a few Eastern countries. And within the chapter, the Humanitarian Superpower, I would like to put also the United Nations and add to that, is it a vehicle for political influence and economical interests? I've put aid as a business as a topic, and mainly because one of the bigger lotteries here in Sweden is called the postcode lottery, and a lot of their revenue, or I'm not certain what word I'm looking for, the income that they gain, the wealth that they produce, goes straight into Clinton foundations, among others. Under the Humanitarian Superpower, I've put the topic pointing fingers and self-proclamation.
Om världens ungdom bestämmer sig för att apartheid ska bort, då kommer apartheid att försvinna. Och det är ert ansvar.
Because I think that's something that we are very good at here in Sweden. We're good at pointing fingers, setting the tone for the debate or discussion.
Det mottogs ju inte med goda ögon, men de vågade inte protestera offentligt, men vi märkte detta.
And letting everyone know that this is how it is.
Och det är ert ansvar.
And we are what we say.
The Swedish Social Democracy Party was a member of the Socialist International, a movement that also included Robert Mugabe.
So we are the humanitarian superpower, as our ministers put it. Our effort into this world is to help others selflessly.
Sunt och skönt för befrielserörelserna att ha sådana samarbetspartner som vi, som inte krävde någonting annat än ska vi säga, vi sa det här är bra också, sa vi, kvinnor måste också ha en roll och de ska bygga upp ett land med lagrätt, och det visste ju många av de här ledarna själva.
And to market ourselves as just that.
Ja, det var ju alltså folkmord, ja. Det var ju en etnisk grupp som var verkligen hårt utsatt. Ja. Och naturligtvis de vita farmarna tog man ju över också. Och deras mark. Och man fortsätter med det redan, även nu den nya presidenten, det var ju en av hans grejer.
Perhaps you agree, perhaps you don't. And I've put a wee bit of chaos in its path.
Det hände ju under frågan om vapen att folk kom och frågade mig om vi kunde ge stöd till den väpnade kampen.
And I will come back to this a little bit later, I think, when we get to foreign aid and...
Den väpnade kampen, sen kan man ju aldrig veta, och sen kan man ju alltid säga att om du får pengar till butterballs, då har du mer pengar till gunballs.
Political conflicts internationally. And I think Sweden now is in a unique position among similar countries. And perhaps that's why you are interested in watching this video.
Och min andra uppgift som blev allt viktigare, under de där åren jag var där, det var merparten av 80-talet jag var där, det var att bygga upp ett stöd ifrån Sverige till apartheidmotståndet inne i Sydafrika.
At least I hope so. So, that's the first chapter. And the second chapter I will call The Hidden History. And by the hidden history I mean a few key points from World War I, or the time prior to World War I, prior to the Russian Communist Revolution. We have a media figure here in Sweden called Robert Aschberg. He's a prominent figure and was mainly during the time when private television was allowed here in Sweden. He's been a host of many shows and also somewhat of a political journalism figure. Now we'll talk a little bit more about Robert Aschberg later in this video. But in this topic or chapter, the hidden history, I would like to focus on, I think it's Robert Aschberg's great grandfather, if I'm correct. He's called Olof Aschberg. And he has a Wikipedia here in Sweden. And I just compared the two versions between the Swedish one and the English one. And I noticed that the Swedish one is a little bit more elaborate on certain aspects of this character. Anyway, I will paste some images and media here. I want to talk a little bit about World War II and the relations with Germany during that time and profiteering. I would like to talk a little bit about Estonia. It's a big ship that sunk. And here's also a little bit interesting, because on the official Wikipedia there is an official cause for the perhaps catastrophe or the reasons why this big ship sunk.
Men de dykningar som genomfördes var den 2 och den 3 oktober.
Och det här är 1994?
94.
And the official expedition diver and a lot of other people, they tell a different story, because this wreck.
Så jag tog mig ner en bit till och ser då uppfläkta plåtbitar som inte ska finnas där. Och det här är alltså inte vid själva rampen där det tydligt fanns en massa skador.
It has a big hole, as if from an explosion in its side.
Vad fick du för intryck då?
Jag bestämde mig ganska snabbt, för det där ser ut som det är en sprängning.
And of this, nothing is told on Wikipedia.
Klappe, die angeblich technische Mängel aufwiesen. 3 Jahre untersucht dann eine skandinavische Havariekommission. 3 Jahre, in denen absurde Dinge bei den Ermittlern vorgehen. So werden Dokumente gefälscht, Beweise vernichtet und Zeugen eingeschüchtert. Und die noch ein Gewissen haben, treten von ihren Ämtern zurück. Kurzum, die ganze Untersuchung gerät zur Fahrt. Haben, die hier ganz eindeutig ein Teil zeigt, ein Sprengpaket. Im Tauchverbot berufen sich die Küstenbewacher auf ein schwedisches Gesetz, das eigens erlassen wurde, um Tauchaktionen zur Estonia zu verbieten. Allerdings hat dieses Gesetz hier im internationalen Gewässer gar keine Gültigkeit. Aber man versucht uns einzuschüchtern. Die Küstenbewacher kommen an Bord. Derweil lässt die schwedische Küstenwache nichts unversucht, um die Tauchaktion zu stören. Sogar eine Wasserwerfübung wird als Drohgebärde eingelegt und jeder einzelne Schritt wird auch aus der Luft überwacht. Nur zu gerne sehe es die Küstenwache, dass wir an dieser Stelle abbrechen würden, denn sie wissen sehr gut, was als nächstes auf unserem Programm steht.
And under hidden history, I would also like to add Olof Palme, whose death is surrounded by a great deal of weird details.
Varför jag blev så viktig, och det ska vi säga, varför jag, Birgitta Karlsson-Dorp, blev så viktig i det här.
Country to come in and hide out, like for the soldiers to gain military training as well, and as well provide some weapons in South Africa. Yeah.
Oh, so Sweden supported also with some arms?
Yes, they did, especially money they smuggled in. So it really helped out with the funding. That's the most important thing, and also smuggling in the refugees, like giving out political asylum.
Men det här var alltså ett hemligt bistånd.
Ja.
Man kände inte till det egentligen här i Sverige. Och därför så var det ingen som kände till det liksom i debatten och så, va.
And the death that was for a long time thought to be the cause of a person called Christer Pettersson, which has become quite a cult figure in Swedish popular culture. And this figure, or this suspect perhaps, Christer Pettersson, he was, well, living a hard life, a roaming life.
Det är väl bra. Bra! Vi vet väl inte vad han sysslar med. Tänk om det ligger lik i garderoberna när vi kommer tillbaka hem. Försök omedelbart att bryta det där avtalet. Det är bara ett tänkt scenario, men jag tror det ligger någonting i det.
With a lot of drugs and alcohol. And, for some reason, Robert Aschberg followed this person a great deal and asked him a great deal of questions.
Du lever ganska miserabelt. Jag menar, du har ingen fast bostad. Och...
Nej, det har jag inte. Det har ju sina förklaringar.
Det är ju alltså ett erkännande.
Ja, det kanske är det. Ja, det vet jag inte om det. Jag hänvisar till professor Lidberg. Jag säger att det är psykiatrins utmarker.
Du snackar inte skit, hörru. Nej, men Christer, frågan är... Sätt dig, vi går vidare. Du, kan jag få spela... Vad är det någon polis eller vad är det med? Nej, vänta Christer. Det här är så... Christer, vänta. Det är kört!
And as I've been talking now about Olof Palme, I think at least some of the viewers will think of his doings down in South Africa during the fall of apartheid. So we'll get back to that a little bit as well. And why I put it under the chapter The Hidden History, it's because during this time where Sweden put a lot of financial aid into South Africa, this was done in a very secret way. It was not discussed, it was not followed up what the money went to. And also have some interesting quotes from the top diplomat in this operation. According to Wikipedia, she's called Olof Palme's secret helper. So we'll explain that a little bit also.
Det var därför jag blev så viktig.
Så det skedde lite i det fördolda?
Ja, det gjorde inte så lite heller, va. Det var vi tvungna att göra, annars hade vi inte kunnat göra det, va. Och Palme var alltså motorn i det här, va.
And in the hidden history, I would also like to put the relationship with China, opium trade, and the rise of communist China. Chapter 3. How the country got rich and why it's getting poorer. So Sweden came out on top, or at least pretty well, out of World War II. So the Industrial Revolution could have a continuum throughout time here in Sweden. we had our industries intact, and we also made a lot of money during the wars. Sweden has been a high trust society. We have been trusting each other highly, and we have been trusting our government highly. We've had a high technological standard, and we've been prominent in international affairs. And going back to the humanitarian superpower after the World War II, as we call it, a lot of European nations started this union to prevent any similar wars from happening again. And of course, Sweden, by having this fortunate situation in the war, was very well equipped to endeavor in this organization. So the country as of now is getting quite a bit poorer, I would say. At least the average citizen is getting poorer and probably is about to get even poorer in the coming times. The citizens here in Sweden, they are high in private debt. By that I mean the citizens have a lot of debt themselves. We have debt because we take very big loans to have somewhere to live. And due to taking these very big loans, the money is actually, or the currency is inflated, because by each of these loans from private banks, the amount of money existing, either as a debt or as a real currency, is causing other people's money to lose value over time. So here in Sweden, if you just stock up on money, it will lose value over time. So it's better to invest. So a lot of people are investing. So it's quite complex, the economical situation, I would say. We have had quite a few of banking scandals here as of late, and this is not unique for Sweden. This has happened in Europe as well. I think it's at least Deutsche Bank and Danske Bank that are involved. And here in Sweden we have Swedbank, Nordea, and a few days ago I was noticed that also SEB is probably involved in these scandals. And when talking about economics, it's good to notice that Sweden is, I think, if not top 1 to at least top 3 in being a cashless society, which means we don't use cash in the terms of physical cash, like papers, bills, and coins. And this is also quite a complex question, I would say, and it's also heavily related with the bankings and depth and such. Because, as I said, or tried to say, when we take a loan here in Sweden from a private bank, the money is actually created at the instance of the loan. So I put myself in debt for the bank to gain access to this amount of money, which then they lend out to me. So if we were to have all our cash intact, or the kind of cash system perhaps, it would not hold, because we have taken so many loans in digital currency that there is no way to actually go to an ATM, automatic teller machine, and withdraw your money from the bank, because that money does not exist in physical money. So we are rapidly removing the possibility to withdraw cash, insert cash into the bank, and pay with cash in stores. So this is also very complex, because according to the law, the stores or wherever you want to put your money are obliged to accept any official currency in the country. So bills and coins are currency for sure, but a lot of places nowadays don't accept it as a payment. And this is not written a lot about in the news. Perhaps the occasional article which proclaims the positive sides of being a cashless society. Perhaps the stores and markets are not as often target of robberies anymore. But instead, criminals try to steal items and perhaps clothing of value, cell phones or the like, perhaps cars or mopeds or any other technical equipment. So here in Sweden we don't accept the government-made money in a lot of our stores. Instead, we accept the bank-made digital currency. Something to think about, perhaps. And last point on economics. We have a very famous school here in Sweden. If you want to become anything within economy, you want to go to this school. And it's the Swedish School of Economics. I'm not certain about the translation. I will put it in the video for sure. And this school, they have a scholarship that's called the Female Economist of the Year. And this scholarship, or the money involved in this scholarship, has ties directly to the now deceased Epstein, whom probably did not kill himself. Alright, that was chapter 3. On to chapter 4. Hiding facts and statistics. So here in Sweden, we are proud of our, State Central Statistics Bureau. And we trust that source very highly. But these statistics, they seem to be very complex.
Well, I don't know, actually.
And a lot of undantag, let's see. A lot of exceptions are made in this statistics.
He has called Stockholm the rape capital of Europe, possibly even the rape capital of the world. His implication is that actually with an influx of immigrants, and particularly a lot of young male immigrants, the crime rate, particularly around sexual crimes, has risen in the capital.
Well, there is he's not. I should say that he's not really know what he's talking about. Well, when we make surveys about if any woman has been, if there's been a rape towards her and sexual harassment, we can see that the level is going down and going down and going down.
And we have had the police here in Sweden, they have become more and more political in their let's see, task, or perhaps their mission or their job. Anyway, we have had this code that they can report crime under, which will then be hidden from the public. So for some reason, Swedish police thinks it's a good idea to hide facts or statistics from the public. We've had some recent changes in laws and definitions of crime under, I would say, weird circumstances. Because, as you may have heard, there's been a surge in sexual violence, rape, and crimes of that sort here in Sweden. And this is not unique for Sweden. This has happened elsewhere in Europe as well. But during these years, when these statistics started to show up, some very smart people, I assume, thought it would be a good idea to change the definition of rape to include a lot more than it did before. And we've also added a law because, you know, it has never been allowed to rape or to forcefully force someone into sexual intercourse in any way. But now, as of, I think it's 2 years back, we have a new law that's supposed to stop this or help, you know, the cases to be cleared, I think. But as a fact, 2017, about 13 rape cases were cancelled each day here in Sweden. And this law, it has not helped very much to solve this issue, but it has made it so that it's now illegal for two people to have sex if there is no agreement made, either by pen or vocally. So it's a pretty complex situation as well. And I'm just hoping that this actually helps victims in these crimes. And that it's not only some kind of signal that we are trying to fix something. And within hiding facts and statistics, we had for quite some time now a lot of happy reports about economical growth and economical superiority in a lot of places here in Sweden. And in many cases, the migration is the cause of this economical growth. And the leader for an organization called LO proclaimed a few years back that the migration may turn Sweden into a super economy. Of course, this has changed very rapidly now over about 2 or 3 years.
Är det ett socialistiskt samhälle som är Vänsterpartiets mål?
Ja, det är det ju. En demokratisk socialism är vårt mål.
Mer av gemensamt ägande säger du. Här står det att ni ska upphäva ägandet. Både såväl det samhälleliga som det privata. Vem ska ta över det där då?
Tanken är ju i ett långsiktigt mål att man så att säga äger sin arbetsplats gemensamt. Det är ju en sorts klassisk definition av socialismen. Som är
men är det... Jag bara tänker...
As of now, about a third of the communal areas here in Sweden are, well, quite a bit below budget, so to say. They are in a very stressful situation, economical. And there's not much context given to this problem. Some people say it's because of the aging population here in Sweden, which I will get back to later. And some also, of course, say it's because of the migration. But the responsibility for this sudden turn in view of the future in the economical aspect is not very much explained. The people in charge are not put under pressure by journalists. They are mostly put under pressure by citizens, just like myself. Citizens who take their time to call, ask questions, and report to the public in the way that they can. Because here in Sweden it's also popular to censor and to stigmatize individuals for speaking out. Anyway, Chapter 5, Endless Schooling and Times of Peace. So Sweden has had a long and well-constructed school system. I think it spans for about 200 years as of now. And it's not hard to imagine that this school system and process has been fine-tuned to fit the Swedish government, perhaps. And in my personal experience of the Swedish school system, I've heard all the stories about how good this country is, how neutral this country is, and how our neutral position made us a key player in the United Nations and the negotiations internationally. This all happened before my birth, of course, with Olof Palme and everything. So it's quite interesting to learn about it in a way that's not presented by the school system, perhaps. We've had some deals and pacts and negotiations signed by our political leaders. That's also hard to understand, and it's complex. Anyway, in the school, I'm not sure if this is still going on or not, but when I was in school, we had something called nutidsorientering. And that would be something like orienting in our times, perhaps. So this was a short quiz every week of 10 to 12 questions about happenings in the world. That was obviously good to know about them. So if you read the correct papers, and articles, you knew the answers to these questions. But nobody has ever, in discussion with me at least, or in my surroundings, thought of this as a perfect way to plant the correct ideas in the mind of the youth. Perhaps it's not. Perhaps it is. Anyway, so recently we had a proposition here in Sweden to remove all historical studies of times before the 700. So anything that happened before the year of 700 is probably not so interesting for the youth of today. And in my opinion, this is because the school system and the government, the Swedish state now, they would like to create a new mold for the youth. A mold that everyone can fit in and agree with, and hopefully they think it sounds very nice and would like to continue that story. This was changed just to clear that out, but I think this will come back again, because I think there is political will behind removing some of this history. Anyway, next chapter, chapter 6, the political climate and the progression of what's, center on the political spectrum. So the political spectrum, perhaps you're familiar with the right and the left, and the right wing and the left wing, and the right wing extremist and the left wing extremist, and all of this. So if you keep that kind of scale in your mind as a model for the political system and political discourse, you will see it as a one-dimensional graph with the right and the left and the center. So over time here in Sweden, the center has seemed to, moved in one direction for some reason. So for perhaps 15 years ago, the definition of what is racist was a totally different thing than it was 10 years ago. And 5 years ago, it's an all new thing altogether. And 1 year ago, it's also a whole new thing. And perhaps this will be a new thing in 5 years ahead in time. And one must ask oneself, is this scale really something that's real, that's able to tell anything in reality? Or is it a model that we have in our minds? And how does one think if one, say 15 years ago, said that something was racist, and then 5 years later they changed their mind and something else is now racist instead? And 5 years ahead of that, something else is now racist instead. Doesn't seem very sustainable to me, at least. So I think we should get rid of this scale and see the world for how complex it really is. Anyway, the streamlining of politics. So this is very, I don't know much about the actual political debate in a lot of other countries. I'm not happy with the time I spend thinking about the politics here in Sweden with our democratic system and the voting and everything. But the streamlining of politics has been taking place, I think. Because, at least in my mind, back in history, it was easier for one individual to stand out in these political parties. They could have their own opinions, and they could say that a member of their own party were wrong. This does not happen very much lately in Sweden. The political parties, they are all, the members within one political party, doesn't matter which, they have all very streamlined opinions. And they won't take interviews and tell what they really think. Instead, they tell the story, the official story of the party. And this is scary, I think, because we are all people and we all have our own understanding of the world and perception of the world. So why should we try to fit in within each other's definitions and plans for political conquest? I'm not sure. And maybe that's why I have a hard time understanding the democratic system here in Sweden. Perhaps not. And the political climate here in Sweden, I think I also have to take up the media. And I think for a long time now, the politicians here in Sweden, they have been very afraid of the media. Either afraid, or they have been very much aligned with the media. They don't get much of the hard questions, the complex questions. Instead, they get to tell their story through the media. And I'm not particularly happy with this because there are so many unanswered questions that never gets an answer because the media has already asked their questions. And sometimes it seems as if the questions were prepared by the politicians themselves. This has been starting to change in the last 3 or 4 years or so, but it's still pretty bad. And a lot of the so-called journalists, they prefer to make a career of for themselves by, asking the correct questions instead of actually formulating questions that would, bring light to complex questions. Anyway, Chapter 7, the demographical problems, the cause and solution of all. So, as I said, I would get back to the demographical problems. Because we have been told for a long time now that we are not making new babies in a fast enough rate here in Sweden. And I'm not sure what a fast enough rate is, but I know that the population must, on average at least, produce something like 2.1 or 2.2 childs per family to sustain their population.
In absolute terms, we are receiving as many people as France, England and Germany, and Sweden is around 10 million, and France and the UK and the others are around 50, 60, 70 million. Basically, the US is providing these flows for us. You make war and we get the refugees. So,
And I'm not sure, what the end goal here is. Is it to sustain? Is it to grow. Is to grow as fast as possible, like the economical goals. It's complex as well. But we have heard for a long time now that we have demographical problems. The citizens are getting old and we're not making new citizens in a fast enough rate for the companies to hire new personnel, etc. So a solution to the demographical problem is to have people migrate into the country and thus increasing the population. But we have one minister in Sweden called Magdalena Andersson, who has been the Minister of Finance for some time now. She likes to carry this sentence around with the demographical problems. So she solves the problem with migration. But when migration has been going on for 30 years now or so in this fashion, we have another demographical problem, because now the demographical problem is more that we have some areas in Sweden where we have concentrated the migration, and therefore we've also in some way lost insight and control in those areas. So it's also a demographical problem. And this is also a problem that's called integration problem. Because if we have managed the integration, everything would be perfect. And we would have a super economy. So that's also included in the phrase demographical problems. And another way to solve the demographical problem of the aging population is to make the population work longer. So if we don't have enough people to hire and to work, we can make the old ones work a little bit longer. So the last Prime Minister, who is the person who said the famous lines, "Open your hearts," which I used for the intro of this video.
Jag kommer nu vädja till svenska folket idag att ha tålamod med det som nu följer, att öppna sina hjärtan.
He proclaimed that we should work till we are 75. 65 has been the official number earlier, but now we have a little bit too good, so we have to work. Well, I think the goal is 10 more years, so that the government aid that you're supposed to get when you retire can be postponed for some time. It's also a complex question. And I will get back to this individual who proposed that. He's called Fredrik Reinfeldt. Anyway, this Minister of Finance who has coined the demographical problem, or at least used it quite a lot. About 4 or 5 years ago, this is what she said about the economical situation in Sweden. The Swedish economy functions as a newly produced Tesla. So that's a car, if you haven't heard it. Well, I assume you have heard it, because it has been marketed very well. And I think there's a little bit of a connection here when the Swedish minister uses that product to describe the Swedish economy. Don't you think? Anyway, so that was 4 or 5 years ago. As of now, this year, or I think maybe last year, I don't remember, she said that we are now standing in front of the hardest economical situation in over 100 years. So what has changed? And how could they not foresee this? Is a good question. And is it related to, the proclamation that the migration would cause a super economy? And instead now we have a lot of problems because of it. And it's not because of migration, it's because how it is handled by our political leaders. But I'm pretty certain that they will not take responsibility. They will find a way to make the taxpayers pay for it, or make the population here feel obliged to do as they say, perhaps, to fix the problems and to, win over racism. Anyway, that was chapter 7. On to chapter 8. Monopolies and media connections. I made a Swedish video about this, the media landscape here in Sweden. It turns out that there are a few key organizations that own pretty much all of our media here. And it's so bad that you could almost say that they have a monopoly of the news reportings. We have some other weird stuff going on with the state media. State media recently released a video where they proclaim their position as the truth among, fake news and, attempts to destabilize and influence Swedish politics. So the state media is the truth here, the old friend that will always be there for you, so to say. The state media, they had a huge increase in budget, and this was not reported by the journalists here. They did not examine it very deeply, because this is something objectively good for all of the citizens. So now we pay for the Swedish state television by tax. Earlier it was a free choice. If you wanted to take part of that television, you could pay for it. Now everyone has to pay. And the state media has found an increasing interest in the entertainment business. So they would like to compete with the free market in entertainment and perhaps more cultural programs. Yeah. The state television have a channel directed towards kids for knowledge. It's called the Knowledge Channel. And just two examples from this channel is that they tell our kids what words mean or why the politics are as they are. And one phrase they explained recently through this Knowledge Channel is the term to be secondary offended. I'm not sure that is a good translation, but what I mean is that if I'm offended, that I'm personally offended. But this word means that I'm offended because someone else could be offended by what has been said or done. So here in Sweden, this is not only Sweden, because I watched a lot of videos from America and other European countries, where they have the exact same behavior, where people are offended because they think that what has been said and done can be offending to someone else. This channel also explained to our kids what freedom of speech means. And to put it shortly, it means that you can say whatever you want as long as you don't offend anyone. All right. So we have had the discussions of fake news and Russian trolls and Russian interference in politics and political discourse. And this also, made a few fact checkers appear. So we have this organizations for innovation called Vinnova here in Sweden. And they wanted to make sure that the Swedish people got the facts straight, that they had the facts. So that we have a site that we can go to find the truth. Or perhaps a Facebook page that will examine what has been said elsewhere and come to the conclusion whether it was the truth or not. And I'm hoping to find some good historical pictures of how this turned out, because it's a mess. We have had government officials that has concluded that it is okay to, how to put it, it's okay to freeze out one certain political party here in Sweden. So it's okay to make sure that they don't look good in state television. And of course, in the political debate, this party has also been excluded from discussion and debate, even though they've had 18% of the voters in the last election.
Well, I don't think that the racist party will be that big, and they're not rising in polls anymore.
So almost a fifth of the voters are excluded from political debate and discussion.
Och därför så måste man ställa sig frågan, varför är det så svårt för de här människorna att få jobb? Jo, det är för att de inte är svenskar, för att de passar inte in i Sverige, och det är klart att då är det svårt att få jobb. Det är klart att då är det...
Och SVT tar avstånd ifrån det.
In Swedish politics. The media here, they have very good connections internationally. And perhaps you'll follow the Greta Thunberg spectacle. And it's very interesting how well connected the Swedish political figures and media figures are with internationals. So Greta, she can just walk right into the United Nations and hold speeches.
Up here, I should be back in school on the other side of the ocean. Yet you all come to us young people for hope. How dare you? You have stolen my dreams and my childhood with your empty words.
She can travel all around the world with help from Arnold, with help from other organizations that would like to help her go about and tell the world what they are doing wrong.
So will you be disclosing your finances? Will you be telling us who is paying for your trip, your Tesla, and bringing you to our country in the middle of an election?
Thank you very much.
I'll pay. You're paying for everything. You pay for the Tesla?
Who was paying for the Tesla?
You bought the Tesla for free? You borrowed the Tesla for free from New York. Have you registered as a third-party advertiser coming to this country in the middle of an election period?
And this, I would say, it's a political grooming going on. Now, there is something called grooming, and this term is used when adults, prepare children for their own needs, so to say. And in my opinion, this is just that, but in a political sense. We're preparing the youth of the future for the politics that we would like to have. And the media here in Sweden, over time, we've had so many different campaigns. Perhaps you've seen them. Vi gillar olika, Refugees Welcome, Antifa, to name a few. And how it's interesting how easily the Swedish population latch on to these campaigns. We are very eager to show that we stand for what's good and definitely not what's bad and racist. Next point, or next chapter in this story, is propaganda and scare tactics. Who's the boogeyman now? For a long time we have been told here in Sweden who to be afraid of. And this relates, of course, to the political debate where one party is excluded. They were supposed to be the scapegoat of our times, but it seems they have made it past that stage now, and they're now becoming a big player in future political discussion and debate. Which is quite sad, actually, because for about 20 years now, people have been angry and mad at each other, screaming, even killing each other over, this exclusion. And now they're starting to become the top player. And in the recent polls, they were the biggest party as of now. Yeah. And this is also going back to the media. It's very important for the citizens here in Sweden to know what terrorist-classed organizations think about Trump and others, but mainly Trump. It's very interesting to know what Al-Qaeda thinks about Trump and what's going on in America. It's also important for us to know what ISIS thinks of Trump as a president. I have no good explanation for this. Perhaps some international viewer has heard similar stories in their countries. I hope we can figure this out somehow. We have propaganda incorporated in school. We have texts about the political parties, and we have actually, political role-playing in the school where children can vote and represent the different parties. And as you may have figured, the excluded party is not a very popular party to, role-play. Or at least when I was in school, that was the situation. I assume it's a little bit different now because they've grown and so forth. But when I was in school, we had this role-playing where we got to vote and discuss the results and read about political parties and everything. And this excluded party, the Sweden Democrats, they were extremely low in these polls. But the discussion on why the difference between, the real voting and the school role-playing voting, why there was such a big discrepancy between them was not discussed so much, at least not in my environment. Anyway, we have propaganda. We have a few good names here in Sweden, a few good newspapers also, of course. We have two men called Wolfgang Hansson and Anders Lindberg, and a female in the same media outlet called Lena Melin. And it's quite funny, actually. A few weeks ago I just made a Google search for the names and went to the tab News, and there you can see a list of all their articles for some time, and I think you can see some patterns there, and I hopefully can show it in this video by putting in some images. We have had, the top boss of the newspaper Aftonbladet, which the former 3 people work for. The boss there, he went on and became the boss of the Swedish state television. So the ties are very tight here, State television and the free media, they have close relations. And just a few odd cases. The state media, they censor facts here in Sweden. So recently we had a case where a man was sentenced to 10 years in prison plus deportation. But when the Swedish state television report about this, they only said that it was sentenced to 10 years in prison. So they leave out, facts that seem to be, of some kind of value or importance. So they selectively give you the truth or their reportings, to say, and they hide certain aspects of it. They also censor images of criminals and offenders, even when the police don't, or even in cases where the police needs help or asks for help of the public to solve crimes. The Swedish state television still find it appropriate to censor images of offenders. But this is only certain in some cases and some areas, of course. Because if there's a successful person, Swedish person, then it's very okay to put the picture up there. Anyway, next chapter, chapter 10. Racism and actions to punish and silence citizens. So here in Sweden we have been debating racism for a long time now. We're a very racist country here.
If you said you had a problem with integration in Sweden, you'd be called a racist.
If you come here from Italy or France or Germany or Norway or Iceland or America or Japan, be wary, because this country is very racist and it might hurt you. So I'm not so serious when saying that, because a lot of tourists have come here and I'm not sure if they have been, target of the racism. But here in Sweden we have quite a few actions to find racism in the population. we have government-funded organizations that look through social media for statements and expressions that could be racist or racist in such a matter or way that you are to be convicted of this crime that's invented here. It's called hets mot folkgrupp, and this means that you have uppviglat mot en folkgrupp. You have been targeting a specific people or country of origin or religion or the like, these kind of categorizations that people like to put on themselves to show what kind of community they are from or they represent. So we have a law that says that it's forbidden to talk badly about some folk group. But this is not symmetrical, because there are no, or at least very few, convictions of people being racist under this law to perhaps Swedish citizens who have been living here for generations. But we have a huge amount of convictions under this law where Swedish citizens are convicted of calling another group, perhaps an international group or religious group, something bad. So this law is not equal for everyone, so to say. And recently we have an organization led by a person called Tobias Hübinette, who was recently granted 3.9 million Swedish crown to examine racism in the Swedish internet culture. And this racism, I assume, is concentrated to the racism that they can find within the Swedish language, because that's the interesting racism, of course. Racism here is one-directional. You can mainly be racist if you are not part of the oppressed group, so to say. And I think you will find this kind of reasoning familiar abroad. Our police are politically motivated, and they are on a quest to suppress racism.
Mycket.
Vad tänker du om det som hänt?
Ja, man blir ju naturligtvis förtvivlad och alla inblandades vägnar. Naturligtvis den som blir dödad och dennes anhöriga. Men också för en enskild ung kille som begår en sån här förskräcklig händelse. Vad har den personen varit med om för någonting? Vilka omständigheter har den killen växt upp?
And we tidy our statistics here. 2005 was the last year where ethnicity was incorporated in crime reports of victim and offender. So at that time, we drew the conclusion that this aspect of statistics or crime statistics is not relevant. And we have had a few people, defending this assumption or conclusion over the years. And one key figure or prominent figure is called Jerzy Sarnecki. And I will get back to him, I think. As I said, the racism is very one-directional here in Sweden, and I'm going to compare here a case where someone mentioned a site called Gang Rape Sweden on Twitter and a video of a popular person on YouTube called JC Bus. And we have had new laws that forbids citizens to collect public documents into databases that can be accessed and browsed and searched through. This is now for journalists only, and perhaps also some other specific roles. But citizens who are granted access to these documents cannot collect them and put them into a database for others to access and examine, even if it's the true documents. Even if it's the documents that are official, that the citizens are by law allowed access to, they can't do it anymore. This is only for journalists. So you have to be a journalist if you want to collect documents and present trends or conclusions. Yes. Chapter 11. Gender Studies. Here in Sweden we have something called the National Secretary for Gender Studies. And this is a place where, the great minds plan how to incorporate these gender studies in universities and schools, so that citizens and students are incorporated in the gender studies somehow, and to create new jobs for those working with these gender studies. And from this I have personal experience, as I have been working in one of the universities here in Sweden. I had to take a course that was needed to be taken. And in this course I got to learn how to, think about gender and how we treat people. Because, people can't treat other people fairly and respectfully without someone from the gender studies telling them how to think about things and how to examine situations and people. And in this course, the material that I got to browse and take part of, I didn't like it very much because it seemed very, dumbed down. And from the material, you could not draw any, factual conclusions, because the goal of the course was only to make me think about this stuff. I don't have to make a conclusion that's gonna help me understanding how to treat people fairly or equally. It was mainly to get me to think about this kind of stuff. And also, I had to put down my opinions on the subject and different parts of the subject and hand this in to the university. So there they have this kind of database of personnel at university and what they think about this gender studies. I'm not sure why they would want it, but I can think of a few sinister reasons why it's a good thing to have. Yeah. And these gender studies, sorry for incorporating it into this chapter perhaps, but as of lately here in Sweden we have had a huge focus on children's sexuality.
Har ni några sådana barn här som är könsöverskridande?
Ja, absolut.
And for some reason it's very good for our children to think about their sexuality and to think about others' sexuality. It's good for them to partake in perhaps a pride parade where they can see and notice other people's sexuality. And it's good to get them to be involved in the discussion about how sexuality function and what kind of role sexuality plays in our society. And of course, here in Sweden, we put our tax money to good work. So our tax money goes to surgically change children's genitalia and hormone treatments for children who are confused about their sexuality. And perhaps they are confused because of all the different discussions and debates. So perhaps we get to fix this problem by some tax money in near future. We'll find out, I'm certain. And we have some interesting new environments for our children. Preschools that have a whole new model of the gender roles and everything. Perhaps they find obligation in putting down toxic masculine behaviors already in school, and the opposite for perhaps good female behaviors. And that brings me into the next chapter of this story, which is the patriarchy. So everyone is oppressed by men and actually somewhat forced into certain behaviors because of this patriarchy. And in this patriarchy, which also is one-directional, the oppression goes only one way. And as quite a few are, public people or media people or political people here in Sweden conclude, men are the problem. And it's funny because in my mind, boys here in Sweden are very much neglected. They don't do well in school. They have the highest rate of suicides. They have the highest rate of drug-related problems. They have the highest rate of work-related deaths and the similar areas. But this is not so important. It's more important that men have positions that earn them more money than the average female. And the way that they present this problem is by just saying that men earn more than women. And after that, they let that sentence grow in the minds of the audience, so that people perhaps can blame their problems on this fact. And this is the same thing with all these oppressions, I think. It makes individuals blame their problems on this fact, no matter what kind of fact this is to explain oppression. And within this oppression debate, I think, at least as I see it, it's often about equality for me. Equality for me to get me in a better position. Or if you're a politician or activist, it's equality for those to get me a career. If you know what I mean. Anyway, so on to migration. In the year 1975 or 76, it was written in the law here in Sweden that this country is a multicultural country. And this concept is not very well understood, it's not explained, and it's not discussed. It comes as this truth that Sweden is a multicultural society. And the meaning of this, I think we are just now starting to experience or notice what it really means.
The Western world in particular regarded you as a sponsor of terrorism. Is that no longer the case?
طبعا الغرب يعتبر حركات التحرير حركات إرهاب عشان كذا بيتهموني بإني أيد الإرهاب لأني أنا بنأيد حركة التحرر.
We came, we saw, he died. Did it have anything to do with your visit? No, I'm sure it did.
And within this chapter, I will also like to, talk about migration of people, because this migration is not either very well understood, I think. It's not the beer, it's just julmust. So I don't think that people here in Sweden who vote for the political leaders that talk about the migration and the crisis and the problem, they don't understand what's going on very well. They get delivered these truths, it's a crisis, and hence we have to act. It's a crisis, and therefore we have to do this. But we don't understand, the context. Why is this a crisis? And I think we will examine that together around the globe. And these crises are also, they are not designed in any way. And all these boats that help people travel across the Mediterranean Sea, it's just the circumstances. It's not per design, It's never per design. Anyway, chapter 14, affirmation or the lack of. So, by affirmation I mean in your daily life, when you do your routines, your tasks, and whatever you want to do, you get from your environment affirmation on how you are doing. So if you find something interesting, and a lot of people agree that this is interesting, you get affirmation for that. But here in Sweden, during the last decades, if you were interested in, examining the points that I have been taking up in this video so far, if you wanted to examine them good and explain and seek the truth in certain aspects or subjects, it was made sure that no affirmation was given to this individual. Instead, stigmatization of that person was wanted. And we have so many cases of this now that it's very sad, actually. We have individual citizens that notice something that's interesting or weird, or perhaps a lie. They want to speak up about it, of course. They want to tell their fellow citizens that something is weird. But they have been perhaps burned, marked by it. They've lost their jobs, relations, and character, perhaps. So they try to kill those people's characters by association or by delivering this truth that this is either racism, populism, or anything else that will lead to death and destruction. And affirmation in school, and I know that I noticed this in the later years of my schooling, that you almost certainly get extra points if you include these political hot topics that come delivered with these truths. So perhaps if you write about the climate crisis and the truth within it, if you write about the migration crisis and truth within it, and the racism in our society and the truth within it, you get extra points in school. Activism is rewarded. And as you may have noticed, there is something called school strike for climate. And in some cases here in Sweden, the students or the children, they were obliged to partake in these demonstrations for the climate. So activism is interesting and it's rewarded, because see what happened to Greta Thunberg when she started her activism. She really went to places because of that. And you can be a part of that, young one. You can have that fame, those cameras, the celebrities, and all of that. The selfies with the politicians, the pictures in marketing. Yeah. And we've had a lot of organizations over the past decades also partaking in activism, recruiting young people to partake in demonstrations and partaking in anti-demonstrations, trying to ruin someone else's demonstration. Perhaps this is also familiar to you as a viewer. I know there was a lot of talk about, the yellow vests in France and counter demonstrations and everything. It's very complex, these questions. Who are we countering? Who are we demonstrating for? It's a good question to ask, I think. Anyway, next point or chapter, criminality. So over the past decades here in Sweden, we've had a very big increase in criminality, violence, death, and a whole plethora of new types of crimes. Criminality is hidden in statistics, welfare crimes and its effects. Perhaps criminal people learn how to get government aid. They get it, they disappear, and the case is dismissed because this money will not be returned. And to examine and look into these kind of subjects would heighten the consciousness about these ongoings. So it's better to put them under the carpet, so to say. Anyway, regarding criminality and prisons, our prisons here in Sweden, they are full to the brim, and so are our custodies. So as of now, people who are meant to go into custody can't go into custody because we host people that are supposed to be in jail or prison now in custody instead. So you can imagine what this does to a society. People that are supposed to be in custody or locked up are now walking freely in society. And if they don't have a citizenship, they just disappear, Best case. Worst case, they appear in new crimes. And as you may have noticed sometime over the years, we had a terrorist attack here in Sweden. Rahman Akilov ran transport into Stockholm, killing a few people, a young girl among them, and also a Ukrainian citizen, a woman, who lost her leg in that incident. She was deported later and did not get any aid from our government. It's a lot of weird things included in this case as well. A lot of people here in Sweden are talking about it and examining it. A prominent comedian actually hired this terrorist to work on his house and paid him money. That's probably, under the table. But this is also not examined by state media or the other big media players. Anyway, during our opening of the borders, or our open borders period, we have one very interesting person called Dan Eliasson. He's been the head of 4 very important functions in Swedish society. And he personally made sure that the police did not get extra resources for extra controls of our borders. This has led to him, Dan Eliasson, marketing a wristband for people to wear, and I assume especially young girls to wear, to stop sexual offenders from harassing them. We've had cases here in Sweden where the police is out jogging with citizens because they feel afraid of jogging on their own because people have been assaulted, robbed and raped in the park and forest areas in Sweden. We've had so far here in Sweden this year 120 detonations or explosions or hand grenades. It's quite a few. Last year we've had 83. So far this year we've had 120. And going 40 or 50 years back, this number was 0 or close to. In 2006 we had 8 gun-related deaths. Last year we had 45 gun-related deaths. We had a little weird incident perhaps it was this year. An American rapper called ASAP Rocky had a tour, and he was here in Sweden. And he was harassed by 3 individuals who have their origin in either Iran or Afghanistan. And it was quite a buzz about this. Trump was involved, our Prime Minister was involved with statements. And the footage of this incident, because it was filmed by someone in ASAP Rocky's crew, or how to put it. I saw the footage, the raw footage, I think, because I saw the whole footage. But when I looked at the Swedish media outlets, they had a cut version. And in this cut version, you can only see ASAP's bodyguard attack these 3 individuals. While in the other footage, the whole footage, you could see these 3 individuals following and harassing this rapper's crew for quite some time before the bodyguard started getting physical with them. So it's a weird selection of information that's given to the reader. And another interesting point about this is that the investigation report, in just 3 days, it was over 500 pages long. And that's quite something. So obviously a lot of juridical people are involved in this case. And I think this is interesting because a lot of juridical, schooled and working people are very much involved in protecting criminals and protecting migrants here in Sweden. And we have a very interesting figure called Anne Ramberg, who is the front figure of a judicial organization here in Sweden. She has a few interesting quotes. And she's gotten very rich on the criminality here in Sweden, because if the criminality increases, so does the work for lawyers and defenders and others involved in these processes. Anyway, chapter 17, the constellation of power and key figures. So here in Sweden, the corruption is pretty bad as of now. We have a lot of old players returning to the political arena. We have statements and interviews that are weird and false. We have one particular with Ylva Johansson with American media. And it seems that the people that we have elected, chosen to lead us, their main function seems to be to entertain the public.
Om ni ska få drogtesta mig? Ja, ni får redan drogtesta mig. Du måste ha en toalett. Okej? Okay? Ska vi göra det på en gång?
Jag måste berätta lite grann vad det är jag testar då. Det är amfetamin, hasch, opiater och bensodiazepiner.
Jag struntar i det.
Okej.
Ja, jag är så jäkla, jag vet det.
And to tell the story and proceed in their careers. They are badly educated, but they are very well paid. And if they do something wrong, they have very good security and payment after they are perhaps fired or replaced. And it seems like lower ranked politicians mostly sit on their ass, to put it bluntly, and get active each 4th year when there is a vote. So at the only time when the citizen has a say per vote, or a formal function in a democratic system, all of these lower ranked politicians, their job really starts, because this will decide how much resources they can have for the coming 4th year, and how relevant their position will be in the coming 4th years. So if you go around as a citizen and ask questions to these politicians, it's not even certain that they have an answer, or instead they would like to talk about the new movement that the political leaders in the streamlined organizations have proclaimed that this is the important stuff to talk about. So if you have a good question, go out and ask it to your local politician, and just don't take their answer that they would like to give you, that they have prepared to give you. See if you can make them think. See how you can make them reason. And by doing so, I think you can make the decision if this people or this person is someone to trust or not. Because I think this is very important as of now. We have so many research on what we think and what we want in our society, but we have no votings. And I think if we had more votes, I think the politic and the political discourse would better reflect the citizens' mindset and culture and motivations and everything. And perhaps we could make a better future together, instead of enjoying the show every 4th year. It's like a circus comes to town with all their signs, statements, value words. Yeah, I think we could easily make this place more well-functioning in that sense. We have a lot of interesting key figures, and I'm just going to name drop a few of them. Henrik Arnstad, historian and advisor to our politicians. Jerzy Sarnecki, the crime professor perhaps. Stefan Löfven, who is the current prime minister. Where does he come from? What is his education? As you may have assumed by now, his education is pretty much non-existent outside of, his political movement, of course. And let's incorporate the last chapter in this story. Chapter 18. Where are we now and what's to come? So this is a very interesting chapter, I think. We had a very interesting interview last night with our Prime Minister, Stefan Löfven, the talented Prime Minister, as Trump put it. I'm gonna just end with a small section of that. And follow up with the Swedish state media and their statement on why they did this interview. So the state media also make statements on why they make certain interviews or reportings.
Av 13 jämförbara länder ligger Sverige i topp vad gäller dödsskjutningar av unga män. Strax ska vi höra statsminister Stefan Löfvens syn på vad som ligger bakom gängkriminaliteten.
We compare Sweden to most other countries. We have a low level of crimes and we have a low level of deathly violence.
Men vad beror det på att just Sverige sticker ut här?
Som jag sa så tror jag att vi hade ett annat dödligt våld i Sverige för som det har minskat, medan andra länder hade den här typen av problem och vi såg nog inte det riktigt komma att också Sverige skulle kunna få den utvecklingen. Och det här är någonting som har skett under lång tid. Så
varför har vi fått det då?
Ja, men återigen, vi har inte varit riktigt förberedda på att det också skulle kunna drabba oss. Vi hade inte den typen av våld då men nu har vi det och det är därför vi måste bestämma oss. Och riktningen är glasklar. Bestämdheten för att se till att vi visar att samhället är alltid starkare än brottsligheten och vi måste vända på detta.
Gängkriminaliteten hänger ju väldigt nära samman med segregationen och de utsatta områdena. Sverige har fått ett stort antal utanförskapsområden de senaste decennierna där där arbetslösheten är hög, där fattigdomen är stor, där skolresultaten är låga och där det också finns en omfattande brottslighet och otrygghet. Under den här perioden som de här utanförskapsområdena har växt fram, de senaste decennierna, större delen av den tiden har Socialdemokraterna styrt Sverige. Vad borde ni ha gjort annorlunda?
Ja, sanningen är ju det att det här styrs av både borgerliga och socialdemokratiska regeringar.
Större del av tiden socialdemokrater.
Men 8 år före jag tillträdde så var det borgerlig regering. Mellan 91 och 94 var det borgerlig regering. Min poäng är att det här är nog oavsett vilken politisk färg regeringen har haft. Som jag sa så har den här utvecklingen pågått under en längre tid. Och det viktiga att se det att det som ska göras nu det är både som jag säger det hårda men det är också det andra och det där som vi nu säger att vi måste systematiskt, det hjälper inte med några projekt här i några områden utan systematiken är att vuxna människor ska vara i arbete så unga ska se sina föräldrar gå till jobbet, inte vara lediga och inte tro att det är det som är normalt att inte gå till jobbet, det normala är att gå till jobbet. Barnen och ungdomarna ska vara i skolan. Det är där de ska vara och drömma om att bli polis eller lärare eller undersköterska eller industriarbetare, vad man nu än vill bli. Och då ska skolan finnas där och ge ett tidigt stöd så att alla går igenom grundskolan in på gymnasiet och kan komma ut i yrkeslivet istället för att välja brottets bana.
Men att säga att människor ska arbeta eller att barn ska gå i skolan är en sak. Men vad borde ni ha gjort annorlunda för att åstadkomma det under tiden? Om du skulle få backa bandet?
Det är just arbetslösheten som är A och O för vuxna människor. Och det visar ju vi nu. Det går att se till att människor som också har en låg utbildning kommer i arbete. Vi gör det med det som vi kallar för extra tjänster exempelvis. Att människor kan arbeta i äldreomsorgen. Det finns många arbetsuppgifter i samhället. Men det går inte att som borgerligheten tror bara sänka skatterna. Det är inte det som gör förändringen utan det är se till att bygga ett starkt samhälle där det finns efterfrågan på arbetskraft.
Hur skulle ni ha gjort för att öka sysselsättningen och minska arbetslösheten i de här områdena?
Det vi gör, inte borde ha gjort, det vi gör. Sen jag tillträdde som statsminister så är det drygt 300 000 människor fler som går till arbete. 100 000 av dem de finns i vår välfärd, i offentlig sektor, i sjukvården, i äldreomsorgen, i skolan. Och det är viktigt att se till, inte minst skolan, för där behöver vi visa de unga att det här du ska vara. Idag fungerar det ofta så i skolan att den mesta individuella hjälpen det får jag i årskurs 8 och årskurs 9. Vi ska ha den mycket, mycket tidigare. Förskolepersonalen säger ju att de vet nästan vilka som kan komma att få problem. Därför har läsa, skriva, räkna garantin redan i årskurs 1. Man kan se det där de unga killarna och tjejerna ska ha hjälp, inte i årskurs 8 och årskurs 9. Då ökar vi sannolikheten att man går igenom hela grundskolan, kommer in på gymnasiet och då har vi en helt annan framtidsbild.
Men när jag lyssnar på dig så låter det som att du har liksom ingen avgörande bild av vad ni borde ha gjort för att undvika att vi skulle ha fått den situation vi har idag.
För det första när du säger ni så är det, som jag säger så är det...
Jag menar Socialdemokraterna.
Ja, och det här gäller alla eftersom vi har en utveckling under en lång tid.
Absolut, men nu är det du som sitter
här. Så är det både,
ja.
Och det är precis jag som sitter här. Och sedan jag tillträdde så har vi dels, som jag säger, hårt mot brottsligheten här och nu. och en annan inriktning på det starka samhället, det trygga samhället. Vi investerar i det största trygghetsprogrammet i modern tid. Det är därför bland annat som vi har 100 000 fler anställda i välfärden. Vi har över 300 000 fler människor i arbete, så det är viktigt i sig och det måste fortsätta. Utbildningsinsatserna måste fortsätta. De arbetsmarknadspolitiska åtgärderna som gör både den som står långt ifrån arbetsmarknaden, har en låg utbildning kanske, men också den som tillfälligt förlorar arbete, ska snabbt tillbaka in i arbete igen. Det är liksom plikt och rätt. Landet är byggt på plikt och rätt och så ska det fortsätta.
Sverige har under många år också haft en stor flyktinginvandring och många menar att gängbrottsligheten idag beror på det. Vad anser du om det?
Den organiserade brottsligheten, den beror till det som du själv sa på segregation, att det har tillåtits fortgå allt för länge. Men det beror ju på just arbete, är det brist på arbete, om det inte är arbete eller skolorna inte fungerar tillräckligt bra.
Men hänger det inte ihop med den stora invandringen?
Då kan det faktiskt hända exakt vem som helst. Det beror inte på var jag är född utan det beror på förutsättningarna. Så det viktigaste vi gör här det är att minska skillnaderna i vårt samhälle. Vi har också sett ökade klyftor under lång tid och de skillnaderna i samhället måste minska oavsett var jag är född. Bor jag här i Sverige så gäller plikt och rätt. Och det gäller
Men jag bara undrar, för mycket av både fattigdomen och utanförskapet och gängbrottsligheten är ju numera etnifierad. Det är ju liksom, det är mycket fler människor med utländsk bakgrund som både är fattiga och utsatta och som finns i de här gängen. Kopplar du ihop invandringen med segregationen?
Nej, jag kopplar ihop, som jag säger, segregationen beror på att det är för låg sysselsättning, för hög arbetslöshet i de här områdena. Men det hade ju varit oavsett vem som hade bott. Om du så sätter människor som är födda i Sverige under samma förutsättningar så får du samma resultat.
Så hade vi haft samma, får jag bara fråga, hade vi haft samma situation även om vi inte hade haft den stora flyktinginvandring som vi har haft de senaste decennierna?
Om de ekonomiska klyftorna och de sociala orättvisorna hade varit detsamma. Svar ja, det är min bestämda uppfattning. Problemet är ju här att du har några områden som har stora problem med hög arbetslöshet, skolor där inte barnen känner att det här är min framtid. Och det är därför vi satsar nu mer på skolor. Skolor som behöver mer stöd, ska ha mer stöd, får mer stöd. Det är därför vi ska ha människor in i arbete så att ungdomarna ser att de vuxna, de går till jobbet. De är inte lediga.
Kort sista fråga bara. Har du något mål för när ditt projekt om att knäcka gängen har lyckats?
Polisen själva säger att nu med det de gör nu så räknar de med att kunna se en skillnad inom 6 månader. Det är polisens bedömning och det är därför polisen behöver allt stöd nu för att kunna genomföra detta. Vi kommer säkert att åka på bakslag också under den tiden. Men samhället är starkare än den organiserade brottsligheten. Så polisen ska göra sitt, de ska ha allt stöd. Men det är ett helt samhälle som måste göra den här uppgiften. Samhället är starkare än brottsligheten.
Stefan Löfven, tack så mycket.
Tack så mycket.
Och det är en tillitsfråga. För om ni känner tillit, då är det utgångspunkt att människor ni möter är ungefär som ni. Vill ungefär samma saker. Och då spelar det ingen roll hur de är klädda, vilken hudfärg de har, vilken religion de tror på. Utgångspunkten är den här är en medmänniska som också vill något bra. Då har ni tillit. Har ni inte tillit då tänker ni den här människan ser inte ut som jag. Det är förmodligen en sån här slem typ som är halvkriminell och bara vill suga bidrag som jag ska betala. Och har man den inställningen, och den har alldeles för många människor, då har tilliten gått ner. Och då börjar vi rösta och tänka att vi ska kontrollera. Finns ingen tillit, då ska alla andra människor kontrolleras. Utom jag naturligtvis, för jag klarar mig. Men alla andra slämma typer måste ha mer kontroll och mer gränser och murar och mer poliser. Därför det går helt enkelt inte att lita på er. Så tillit styr samhällsutvecklingen. När det finns tillit, då blir världen öppnare. När den saknas, då får ni mer murar och kontroller. Det är det danskarna håller på med nu. Jag såg tv igår, nu är danskarna stolta, äntligen ska de få kontrollera alla svenskar. Det är ungefär som vi kollektivt har blivit galna i Sverige och kan inte släppas in i Danmark för då blir Danmark smittat. Det är den typen av vi- och dom-tänkande som just nu styr världen. Fullkomligt livsfarligt. Det kommer bara skapa nya krig.
All right, so I did it. I made it through the chapters of the story I wanted to tell. Thank you for listening, and if you haven't, feel free to check out any other videos that I've made. They're all here on YouTube, and if not, I'm gonna put them up somewhere else because I have, a media backup of all the videos that I make, because I know how easily things get taken down and so forth. But anyway, happy times ahead. Let's make these situations a lot better than they are. Let's do it together over the borders, because we have to end this period, I think. We have to end it where a few outlets control what citizens in whole countries think of, what they work for, strive for, wish for, all of that. We can connect with each other, we can help each other explain and understand, and hopefully see you again in 20 or 30 years, and when I'm close to my retirement, if they haven't, postponed that even further, and we can discuss the historical events that has taken place since then. Looking forward to that. Take care and have a good one.